Welcome to this video about Chapter 3 of The Great Gatsby, where we look at some of the key quotations in the chapter. And I've titled this one, We Begin to Question Who Gatsby Is, but there are more questions than there are answers. So let's have a look at the first few. So it starts off with, somebody told me they thought he killed a man once. And then it goes on to, grew up with him in Germany, and it was testimony to the romantic speculation he inspired that there were whispers about him from those who had found little that it was necessary to whisper about in this world. Now, the first three quotations are all about rumours, and the fourth one is as well, but it's slightly different, and I'll go into that. And so we can see this is like an enigmatical character that is emerging in the text. So he might have killed somebody, and not all the rumours are favourable. You know, this one obviously is disparaging. This is not a good thing that we want to know about our main character. But then we've got, grew up with him in Germany, and I've said that, well, Europe and European culture, it was really fashionable in America in the 1920s. So this one would actually help Gatsby, because European ancestry would also add an air of legitimacy to Gatsby's old money upper class aspirations. Basically, he wants to enter into the old money upper class, this powerful society in America, but he's struggling to do so, and he needs to find some kind of way of making that claim legitimate so that he can be next to Daisy in terms of his class. And if he can do that, then Daisy, he might be able to win her over and attain her for himself. Afterwards then we say Gatsby is like basically an exception to the rule, because even people that don't gossip, even people that don't care about rumours and those kind of things, well, they still talk about Gatsby. So the people that found little that it was necessary to whisper about still whisper about Gatsby. So once again, Gatsby is the exception to the rule. So the party goers, they talk about him because they don't know who he is. And again, it says that he is enigmatical, okay? There's a romance to a mystery, the mystery of Gatsby in this chapter that is emerging. And afterwards then we've got this fourth quotation. The fourth one says, well, he told me once he was an Oxford man. However, I didn't believe him, or I don't believe him. So this is the final rumour, but it's interesting because he told me once. This person has actually met Gatsby, and the person that has met Gatsby doesn't believe him. So the ones that are speculating in the first three don't know, and it's just this enigma. People are just speculating and they haven't got a clue, but the person that actually has met him doesn't believe him. So the final rumour is different, and it's basically some people see through his facade, through this image that he's projecting to the rest of the world, this old money upper class image that actually he doesn't belong to, and we'll see more of that later in the chapter as well. Moving on then, we have, it was one of those rare smiles with a quality of eternal reassurance in it. It faced or seemed to face the whole eternal world for an instant and concentrated on you with an irresistible prejudice in your favour. So this is the first description of Gatsbys Smile at the start here, and it's really fantastic and exaggerated, and we got this bias that Nick shows towards Gatsby. The idea that a smile gives you eternal, forever reassurance suggests that it is wonderful. It basically makes you feel as if all your problems in life disappear or melt away, and that's just in a smile. So in this case, you know, you could actually question Nick a little bit at the moment. Just how much does he like Gatsby? So it builds a case for Nick's possible homoeroticism. Maybe he likes Gatsby a bit too much, and we see a bit more evidence for that previous with Jordan, and also a little bit later in this same chapter as well, which I'll also point out. When talking about this next quotation, we see C. It's a bona fide piece of printed matter. It fooled me. This fella's a regular Belasco. So this is Owl Eyes, the owl-eyed man that actually comments and actually basically going through Gatsby's library, and he's shocked because Gatsby's library is real, but he expected it to be fake. So it's almost as if Gatsby is too good to be true, that the idea that his library is real is just like his house and everything else in it. It is too fantastic, too amazing to be real. But he calls Gatsby a Belasco. He says he's a regular Belasco. Well, Belasco was a theatrical producer that worked in New York, and he was really famous for the reality or the realism of his sets. And so he's suggesting that Gatsby and his mansion and his house and everything in it is just a set. It's just a piece of theatre meant to trick people, meant to actually show people that he is real, he is genuine. So the idea that maybe linking him to Belasco tells us that this is all a facade. And it's also interesting that this is owl eyes. The person that is actually noted or distinguished by his eyes can actually see through this facade. So it is a clue that Gatsby is just a bit of theatre, that it is all an act. So moving on, we have another description of that wonderful smile. So, good night, he smiled, and suddenly there seemed to be a pleasant significance in having been among the last to go, as if he had desired it all the time. So again, we've got more fixation with Gatsby's smile, and it is an infatuation, and it maybe then explains that bias that Nick has towards Gatsby, because maybe he just likes him a little bit too much. Afterwards then, we compare East Egg and West Egg, so we have these two quotations that go well together. Instead of rambling, this party preserved a dignified homogeneity and assumed to itself the function of representing the staid nobility of the countryside, East Egg condescending to West Egg and carefully on guard against its spectroscopic gaiety. So, it's not a rambling party. People aren't mixing. East Egg is condescending to West Egg, so the East Egg people are basically keeping separate to the West Egg people, and they're carefully on guard because they don't want anybody to infiltrate their class. So all the old money upper class East Egg people basically don't want to have all the new money people infiltrating their class and gaining any purchase, because they are really, really careful against that kind of thing. They don't want anybody else to get into their class. Which means that they're basically being really protective and trying to keep people out of that hugely powerful class that they belong to. However, by the end of the party, you have even Jordan's party, the quartet from East Egg, these old money upper class people, were rent asunder by dissension. So by the end of the party, even the old money upper class have been affected somehow, and they're no longer on guard, as it said in this first one. And so maybe it's the corrupting influence of alcohol that means that actually the people from East Egg are now behaving just as immorally as the people from West Egg, because even Fitzgerald himself called this time, the 1920s, the greatest gaudiest spree in history, which means that essentially we're saying that alcohol and all the lavish parties and extravagance was taking a toll on the morality of the people there. So in this case, they're no longer dignified and they're no longer keeping separate, and everything is a bit chaotic and tumultuous, and therefore they are rent asunder. Finally then, we're talking about Nick himself, and he talks about his relationships. So you have this quotation: "I even had a brief affair with a girl who lived in Jersey. Her brother began throwing mean looks in my direction." So why does he tell us this? And is he trying to reassert his masculinity to suggest that actually he isn't too fixated on Gatsby? Maybe that's it. Afterwards I said the idea that her brother was throwing mean looks in his direction. Well, it might be a reference to the fact that despite the fact that Nick is old money upper class, or he comes from that culture, actually, he's actually quite poor. And therefore the brother, knowing this, and knowing that Nick could probably not take care of the sister or afford her such a lavish lifestyle, throws these mean looks in his direction to scare him off, because he's looking for a better or more wealthy man for his sister. Afterwards then, we have this quotation: "I like to walk up Fifth Avenue and pick out romantic women. Sometimes in my mind I followed them to their apartment." This just seems creepy. So he imagines these romantic liaisons with women, but he doesn't do it, but it just, in his mind, he's imagining it, which seems a little bit creepy, but again, is he trying to assert his masculinity or his heterosexuality with these kind of quotations? The penultimate quotation I've chosen is: "Jordan Baker avoided clever, shrewd men. For a moment I thought I loved her." So if she avoids clever, shrewd men, what does that say about Nick? Because actually, she picks Nick later on in the novel. Does that mean that Nick isn't clever, that he's not shrewd? Is this some kind of self-deprecation? Is he basically showing us his insecurity here and telling us that he doesn't feel clever nor shrewd? Maybe. Finally then we have this last quotation, "A tangle back home, a faint moustache of perspiration." And this is in reference to a romance that he had back home before he actually came to New York. And again, we can see that Nick is romantically interested in women with masculine traits. So earlier on in the first chapter, Jordan, she was a slender, she was described as so slender, small-breasted, and at the same time she was also described as a young cadet. And now the tangle back home involves a woman with a faint moustache of perspiration, this masculine quality. And so, again, it might point at Nick's homoeroticism and the fact that maybe he's a bit too interested in women with masculine traits, or perhaps even, well, McGee in chapter 2, or Gatsby even in chapter 3 now.